welcome to the first video of the preseason with FPL IQ. I'm FPL Rob. I am joined with Teach FPL Lucy, and we're sharing our very first drafts of the preseason. We've got some big decisions that we've made, and we're different, which is exactly what we want to show you guys, how different FPL managers work throughout the season. So, Lucian, it's back. Are you happy? Are you excited for a brand new season?
Well, I'm happy with everything except for my first draft, or at least my first few drafts, because really, with everyone making it out as if the game is so easy to play, I am absolutely struggling. And I suspect people who follow my structure will struggle as well. So let's get into it as soon as we can.
Yeah, I think we'll talk a little bit maybe about prices later, but in terms of prices being quite generous, people think that makes the game easier, but I think it makes it more competitive, arguably harder, but that's a discussion for a later time. So we're going to get straight into my first draft here. You can see I've got Pickford in goal, and I've got Virginiana, the backup Everton keeper. I'm just going double Everton, 4.5 million and 4 million. Everton have some of the nicest fixtures in the first 8 to 10 game weeks. So I'm going to go with these two. A lot of people going with Areola at West Ham. That's because he's 4 million and there's potential that he takes the number 1 jersey from Fabianski, whose contract is expired. But one of the more staple or boring ways I play FPL at the start of the season is I want to start with players I feel 100% confident that they're going to start the season. And yes, we'll listen to manager comments and we'll watch preseason friendlies and tournaments. But if you've got both Everton goalkeepers and there's an injury or Pickford for some reason gets dropped, you've definitely got the next goalkeeper. But with the likes of Areola, Pickford gets injured and Areola doesn't take the number 1 shirt, you're down a goalkeeper and you don't want to start a season with a goalkeeper transfer. So something I wanted to ask you is when you're starting your first draft and you start in an FPL season, I personally usually look between sort of 6 to 10 game weeks. So when I'm looking at fixture tickers and fixtures and things like that, because that's usually when I'll first wildcard. How deep into a season, so when you're setting up your team to start an FPL season, how many game weeks do you usually go to say, okay, this player is great asset, but his first 3 fixtures are bad, and I'm going to wildcard in game week 5, so what's the point of starting the season with him? So how deep do you look into a season for a player at the start of an FPL season?
Well, Rob, it really depends on when I wildcard. And I have the tendency to wildcard during an international break, even though prices barely move. So usually I would either plan for game weeks 8 to 12 if I were to roll with a single goalkeeper. However, we have seen in past seasons that home advantage does play a big part in results regardless of opposition. So at least from the goalkeeper front, I tend to use home rotations that look as good as possible, and that would assume that I know who the starting goalkeepers are. But in this climate, I do feel that we've been spoiled by Kasper Schmeichel's departure to Nice last season, leaving us with a Ward-Iverson combo. So at this stage, I understand if we want to use 2 goalkeepers from the same team, but really I'm playing even more old school, the strategy from 10 years ago where we put all our money into 2 players for captaincy purposes. And so I'm going extremely lean at the back, having 8.5 instead of the 9 million that you've invested. I've gone Leno, 4.5, just to permanently roll, as he has shown statistically to be one of the biggest savers of big chances in the league. So I'm just going to roll with his ability alone until my squad looks decimated enough to deserve a wild card.
Yeah, I'm still 8.5 because it's 4.5 and 4. So I am with you with this. But you've gone Leno, I've gone Pickford, and I actually had said to you prior that they were 2 goalkeepers who have a fantastic rotation. So if you are the kind of FPL manager that likes to go and rotate and take that risk, because it kills you when you do that and you bench the one that didn't return, right? But if you are that kind of manager that does like to take that chance and say, right, I want X amount of fixtures or X amount of home games, Leno and Pickford rotate, I think, really well. So going on to my defense, and I've got Estupiñán, I've got Saliba, and I've got Botman. So of course you're going to notice here the big missing name from my side is of course Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, a point that I did post on Twitter about that I'll just sort of briefly gloss over here. First, I'm going to say I'm not saying I'm going to start the season without Trent, because you can see my midfield. I also don't have Salah. This is a first draft, and of course I'm not saying that they're bad picks. They're fantastic picks, but you've got to take in what you think their points will score at the start of the season and the value compared to. So I worked out that I would have like Salah and a 4.5 million defender and a 6.5 million midfielder against like three 8.5 million players. So it's all about trying to figure out where more points are coming from. But a lot of people are fine with Trent's price increase because of the whole he's playing higher up. So in the last 10 games of the season, he got 7 of his 11 assists and he got a couple of goals. So people will argue, well, there you go. The last 10 games of the season, he was absolutely on fire. I completely agree. But the first thing is we need to realize a couple of things. One is previous seasons, the reason why I had such a high price was because he was getting consistent returns and clean sheets from that wing back position. So in 2021, 2022, 2 goals, 12 assists. The year before that, 2 goals, 8 assists. Yeah, 19 to 20 season, 4 goals, 15 assists, and 18 and 19 season, 1 goal and 13 assists. So before his move into midfield, those numbers were huge. But let's not forget that the final 9 out of 10 of those games when Trent was pushed further forward into that central midfield-ish free roam area, the games were so easy. In those 10 games, so they had Arsenal in that first one out of the 9, so you take that, you got 9 left. 5 of those 10 teams were the bottom 5 in the Premier League. 3 of them got relegated. So you're looking at teams that the 5 worst in the entire division. So half of the fixtures they had were against the 5 easiest oppositions. The fact that he was playing more central areas, of those 7 assists he got in his new role, only 2 of them came from that middle area. And one of them was just he passed it and it was a long range goal against West Ham. And the other one was in a 6-1 drubbing of Leeds. And his goal from that position is a free kick, which he would have taken if he was a wing back anyway. So the fact that he is playing further up doesn't necessarily add to the fact that he should be worth that 8 million. Now, he's not in my side because in the first 5 to 8 game weeks, I don't see the clean sheets. And when I'm choosing my defenders, the first thing I'm thinking about is clean sheets. And I don't necessarily believe or trust in Liverpool to keep those clean sheets yet. In the last 10 games, his expected goals involvement and his XGA was 5.58. The whole season was 13.22. So actually, before he got to those final 10 games, he should have had another 7 assists anyway. So it's just the fact that also Liverpool were putting away more of those chances in those last 10 games. So if they were as clinical when he was at that wing-back role, he would have already had the 7 assists. So he would have been doing the same numbers as that wing-back role. And just briefly about the role itself, it feels like, I don't want to say Klopp is copying Pep Guardiola, but the idea that Stones moves forward into that role, Stones is 5.5 million. If he stays in that role, is everyone going to bring him in because he's playing further up? Now, people are going to argue, oh, well, Trent's a nicer passer of the ball. But no, it's the role itself. And I don't watch Man City and see, John Stones bombing forward or playing right wing or next to the striker. So the role itself that he's playing is extremely similar to Stones. And if Stones is 5.5 million, and I've not seen him barely in any drafts, maybe because you can argue Pep Roulette, but if I offered you, John Stones will play sort of the same amount of minutes as Trent, would he definitely be in your side because of that more advanced role? Maybe, maybe not. The final point I'll say is the new signings. So you've got McAllister and you've got, I'm going to butcher his name, and it's, you know who I'm talking about, Szoboszlai, the Hungarian young lad. Dom, perfect. Big Dom, the midfield maestro. So they're sort of going to be more of an attacking oriented in that midfield. And I just feel like if there's going to be players bombing forward, you're still going to have Robbo getting down the wing. But if they're pushing forward, it's going to be McAllister and it's going to be Big Dom that's going forward with the front 3. Trent is going to be starting the phase of play. So when Liverpool win possession back originally, you'd have Trent and Robbo bobbing up the wings. If you look at heat maps on whatever software or whoever you subscribe to or wherever you get your heat maps from, you'll see just how far up Trent and Robbo play on the wings because they win the ball back and boom, they're gone straight down the wings. But if he is central and he's the one winning the ball back, holding it, keeping possession, and letting the other people go forward, so he's going to be deeper centrally compared to being in a more advanced position on the wing. And his beauty of his assists is that whipped ball that he can put in. There's less space, it's more compact, you get pressed more in the middle of the park compared to the wing, and it's taking away his crossing potential because he's in the center, he's not at the side. So that's just a little bit I wanted to say about why I don't think Trent is worth 8 million if he's in that new role, because people are just saying he's in the new role. He did so well at the end of last season. He's worth 8 million now. I actually don't think that is true, because that role isn't particularly more attacking than it was when he was a wing back with a license to get forward. Still a fantastic asset. And I wouldn't be surprised if I start the season with him still or bringing him early on, because after game week 1 Liverpool have some nice fixtures. But with the team that I've got now, for that longevity of my first wildcard, I like to have my team and say, okay, this if I don't touch it for 8 weeks, I'll be quite happy. If Trent is in my side and I have to take away some other players, that means, that week they're gonna have 2 tough fixtures, they're gonna have 1 tough, like, I'd rather sacrifice the one player and have a nice 8 weeks and use my transfers, because that's what it's supposed to be. So in my back line, Botman, 4.5 million, Champions League, the clean sheets and goals conceded and all the stats for Newcastle have them in the top 3 for all stats. He's 4.5 million. It's a joke. Another joke in here is Saliba at 5 million. A lot of people going for Gabriel, maybe for his aerial threats from corners. But if they're going to bring Timber in, or if there's any changes, I think personally Saliba is the first choice, and he seems to pick up more bonus points because he's better on the ball. And then template guy here, Estupian. I think every man and his dog's got him in. He's 5 million. Brighton have Luton at the start. They've got like the best fixtures in the first 5. I think everyone's going to double or triple up on them, and they're probably going to have Estupian and they're probably going to have Mitoma. Before we move on to my midfield, any thoughts on the defense apart from the Trent?
This is where we differ philosophically, because after playing FPL as an eye test person for multiple seasons now, I can safely say that nobody gives you credit when you're right, and you need to have a plan B when you're wrong, because playing the eye test always implies that you have to be prepared to be wrong in the short term, even though the eye test will show that various other players will perform better. Fact of the matter is that if TAA gets a huge haul in the first game away at Chelsea, even if it's just, an assist or maybe just a single goal with bonus or something like that, everyone's going to be rushing to get him in, and you just need to be prepared. So I'm thinking of the opposite. If I own Trent right now, and somehow somebody else like Robertson or Cancelo, even someone like that, he fires, right? I know for sure that I can access any player I want with just one free transfer, because that is the name of the game at the start of the season. Whether you pick a player based on clean sheets, attacking output, no matter what it is, there will be 1 to 2 players that will catch fire, that everyone will buy, and he will rise like 0.4 million in the first 2 weeks or something like that. That is the game. That is the game. When everyone pays attention, you have that one guy that turns hot, everyone will get him. So as much as I like to preach longevity for my squad, I always create a flexible price structure, and they serve as placeholders for whatever I feel like. So for example, as you mentioned, if John Stones really is going to be playing in midfield, that is precisely why I have Luke Shaw in my team as my 5.5 million guy, because that is exactly how I've structured my team at the back. 1 premium, where I can downgrade Trent to anybody I want, Shaw as my 5.5, Estupinian as the 5, which everyone will start with, Cash as my 4.5, which will match your 4.5, and just the basement 4.0, just to make budget. So as much as I like to predict player ability and a team's tactics, I have to admit, at least for the first 4 to 5 game weeks, while the international transfer window isn't shut, I will put my hands up and say that the eye test is not the way to go for the first 4 game weeks of the season. So that's all I'll say to that.
I'll give you this is my smug face. I completely agree, and that's why I have 3 million in the bank. So I could. He's against Chelsea. He goes absolutely crazy. Oh my god, I've completely read the game wrong. He's a diamond in midfield. He's basically a striker for Liverpool, Trent now. I can bring him in straight in for Saliba or Estupiñán. And I've also kept 3 million because I'm really happy with the start I've got for game week 1 and exactly what you said. So Bruno Fernandes, I want to go to Son. I need 0.5 million. I've got 3 million in the bank. I want Mitoma to go up to a 7.5 million because I'm not happy with Brighton without Caicedo maybe and McAllister. I can jump. I've got another million in my back pocket. I want to try Kevin De Bruyne. I'm not happy with Erdegaard. 8.5 to 10.5. I've got 3 million in the bank. I think I like to have a little plan at the start of every. So last season I started with a bench boost. I still stand by it. It was just the wrong season to do it. My cheeky little plan this season is to start with like at least 2 million in the bank because we see 100 million and we think we exactly need to spend 99.5 minimum. And I think if I start the season with a squad that I'm very happy with, who have really good, I think all my players are at home apart from Haaland, right? So if I start the season with a squad that I'm happy with for a few game weeks, there's no, oh my god, he can't play the second or third week, he's awful or whatever. If I'm happy with my squad and I've got money in the bank, I think I'll be fine. So we'll go into midfield. Rashford, 9 million. I think he's in almost every draft that I've seen so far. 8.5 million with Bruno Fernandes. I think that double up is fantastic for United. Wolves, Spurs, Forest in the first 3. If United don't pick up a striker, Rashford's probably going to be one down the middle. So for 9 million, you're getting the striker and you're getting the creative asset. 8.5 million for Bruno. For years, we've spent more than that on him. So why am I not going to start the season with him? And then the 2 Arsenal lads, Ødegaard and Saka. Ødegaard over. So Saka's the top one. I can't believe he's the same price. He should be a million more. So again, Saka's another one who I've seen in every draft. 8.5 million for Saka. So it was between 8 million Martinelli for me and 8.5 million Ødegaard. I just went for the 0.5 more because Ødegaard, I think, is more safe for minutes. And I slightly believe in him a little bit more. But also, I'm not scared to cut Ødegaard from my squad because he's 8.5. He's at, like you said earlier about price points, that 8.5 million price point for me is the sweet spot if I want to go up or down. And then finally, Mitoma, I've already mentioned when I talked about Estupiñán. I think he's the best midfield Brighton asset. I think he's ahead of like Enciso, even though he's a million cheaper. I think he's ahead of Solly March. So yeah, midfield 5, 3-5-2 I'll be playing. Midfield 5, anything you want to point out before I round off the team?
That's what everyone will be doing. Finding the perfect midfield 5 because it doesn't look like there's an Andreas Pereira this season coming from the 3 teams that are coming up, at least as of now. Yeah, that's pretty much all I can say because a lot of people have commented online that the forward market is dead. So they'd rather have a 4.5 million striker, a 4.5 million forward in FPL compared to a 4.5 million midfielder. At this stage, really, yes, price points are a thing. In the end, we're talking about access, right? The biggest weakness of my draft is that I have to sell Salah if I want to buy an 8.5 million midfielder. So the question really comes down to what our expectations are because playing with midfielders in FPL, we have to match a player's output with our expectations of his output. That's the reason why Arsenal and Man United midfielders were so undervalued last season. And that was why we were willing to spend so much money on Bruno Fernandes. Number one, United literally do not have any other midfielders besides Bruno Fernandes. Secondly, we expect Bruno to play like somebody on par price with Salah in some seasons because we always imagine Bruno to be like that talismanic number 10 guy, right, for United. So at this stage, I can't say how United will perform in the opening stages of the season. I don't think anybody can, because as it stands, United are still rumored to are going to sign so many other players,
Mm,
and things will change. And as we said on our Twitter space earlier in the week, if Ten Hag does not make Bruno Fernandes the crux of his entire team, then there is no point investing in Bruno Fernandes, because that was exactly what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did. He revolved the entire United squad running around Bruno Fernandes so that he could cook, as
yeah,
millennials would say.
yeah.
Yeah. So really at this stage, I'd rather invest in so-called safer and conventional FPL quantities. And that's why I feel perhaps you've missed out a bit. As I mean, Mitoma aside, I'm sure we're really interested in the 6.5 million market,
Mm.
which we should debate about more often, because Mbomo, as you've rightly shouted about, is definitely in my squad. He was literally the first name, even ahead of Haaland, because yeah, it's just so easy to pick.
Bold. I'm going to
And
soundbite that. I'm going to soundbite that.
yeah,
I'll play that back in a
yeah.
couple of game weeks and he gets nothing. He was ahead of Haaland. He was ahead of Haaland. He was ahead of Haaland.
At this stage, yes. I think it's important to set our expectations of the midfield based on their price, not assume that Arsenal will finish second again. I mean, at the same time, obviously, we can't assume that United will finish, in fourth again. We can't assume that Newcastle will finish in third place again. So really, we have to decide on our own established order. What is the new world order in this decade of the Premier League? Will Spurs challenge for a top four consistently? Will the new managers that have come in from foreign leagues, despite having better squads, will they actually challenge for a European place? I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult considering the quality of managers the league has. I think Luton and Sheffield United aside, everyone else is pretty much a manager with achievements abroad. So I think competition will be tough, and picking premium players will be a lot more difficult than we think.
Yeah, it's talking about premium. We're not going to talk about him. I've got Haaland in. End of discussion. We don't need to talk about Haaland. But I've partnered him with Ferguson at Brighton because people have been talking about this boy for a couple of years now. He had an injury that took him out of the side, and I know that they've signed João Pedro, but he's 6 million, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin is also 6 million. And I'm just going to see how pre-season shapes up to see which one I start with, because a fit Dominic Calvert-Lewin for 6 million as an Everton talisman and the key striker there. I just want a 6 million striker. I'd love it if Ferguson starts. I think he's absolutely fantastic, and he's got the fixtures. He's in a fantastic team, and I know he's getting more game time. He's getting older, but he's got a big reputation behind him. So I've partnered him with Haaland, but I'll wait for pre-season on that. And again, I've got 3 million. I keep saying it. I've got 3 million in the bank that if I need Ferguson to go up to a Gakpo or whoever, I can make that move. I don't have to worry about it. Going on my bench, I already said the sub goalkeeper, 4 million, both from Everton. Fofana, 4.5. This was Mings, because Botman would go out and swap and rotate with Mings, because I think that's a fantastic pair, Newcastle and Aston Villa. However, this is just going to wait for pre-season, because one, if Poch gets Chelsea back to their old ways, Fofana's 4.5 million. Chelsea have some of the best fixtures. They're top of the fixture ticker over the first 8 games. So if Fofana plays, Chelsea's got the fixtures. If Poch can get him playing how they should be playing to their ability, he's fantastic value. But I don't know if Mings is going to start, because they've got Carlos, they've got Konsa, they've got Pau Torres, and they've got Mings. So I need to wait for pre-season to see actually which centre-backs are going to be the first pair choice for Aston Villa. And then finally, Bell, 4 million. You can go Bell, 4 million at Luton. You can go, I think it's Bayer, who's Bayer at Burnley for 4 million, or you've got Baldock for 4 million at Sheffield United. I've just gone Bell because he did 43 games last season. Now, Bayer would be my first choice because I think Burnley is the best side of the promoted 3. And he did play 33 games, but he got injured 3 times, and he was also injured at the end of the season. It's just the fact that he's had like 3 injuries and he was injured at the end of last season. I don't know if he's back to fully fitness yet. So look, Bell's like, I don't want Bell to play, right? If I'm going 2-3 deep in the first week of FPL, I'm having a nightmare start, no matter who comes on the pitch, right? But Baldock is the most attacking. The fact that he usually plays like right wing back for Sheffield United. And if you remember a couple of years ago in FPL when they were in the Premier League, he was a really, really good pick. But he started 29 games, which is still good. But for 4 million, if I'm going that deep into my bench, I just want a warm body on the pitch that might get me something. And the fact that 30% more games have been played by Bell than the others. So that's why I've gone. And then 4.5 million Woodrow. Why not? I don't care. People are looking at, is it Balogun at Arsenal? Maybe he moves to another club. I know he did well. And I know particularly he's done well in France because of how many inform cards he gets on FIFA. So I play a FIFA game, right? And I see all the time the League One. He's had quite a few inform cards and special cards this year. And you get that for playing well, right? So I know he's done quite well. That's my squad. Any comments on the strikers or the bench before we move on to yours?
At this stage, not really. I don't put that much thought into my fifth defender
No.
unless he's someone like Tino Livramento. So I think preseason will reveal the template 4.0 million defender. We just have to wait for that.
Yeah.
I think the 4.5 million striker is a bit more tricky because unlike last season where we had Andreas Pereira as our eighth attacker, I think this season it's going to be a little bit trickier. So I do hope that Balogun comes good because usually the base price attacker that is severely undervalued will emerge, as you said, when he moves as a third choice, whatever, from a premium team like Arsenal to some mid-table team. Case in point, Emi Martinez, when he was third choice at Arsenal, moved to Villa, did fantastic for us. So I think that's how this eighth attacker will define our seasons, whether we pay attention to transfers between clubs between game weeks 1 and 4.
Yeah, there's a lot of 4 million defenders and 4.5 million attackers, but from what I've seen, there's not a lot that play. So in terms of those 3 defenders that I mentioned, I think they're the key ones. So if we just jump over to your team now, you want to run through it. So your goalkeeper, defense, and midfield.
Is it all right if I talk about my attackers because it's all there? The bank is, the bank is basically in Haaland and Salah, and I think everyone will eye the first 2 game weeks where Haaland plays Burnley, Salah plays Bournemouth. That's a lot. I think it goes without saying that captaincy in the opening 4 game weeks is absolutely crucial, and I think we don't have to do much digging to see that Haaland and Salah both start seasons very, very well, regardless of opposition. So it's just a matter of what you can do around those 2 players. I think it was FPL General that most prominently said that, we have 86 million to choose between 14 players. I completely disagree. We actually have 73.5 million to choose 13 players because that's what majority of Twitter will eventually converge to once the season gets close, especially if Salah gets a couple of goals in preseason. Oh, then that's it. Our template is set. I do like your draft a lot better. I just probably disagree a little bit on the 8.5 million midfielders. But with 3 million in the bank, I can't argue against that. You did not tell me you had 3 million in the bank prior to this.
I was keeping it in my back pocket.
Yeah, that's Gal, right?
Hiding it from the tax man. That's what it was. But you have to remember, I don't have Salah and I don't have Trent, so that's why I've only got 1 premium and I've got a lot of 8.5s, or I could go up to 9. So I'm going more for look. Haaland's going to be most people's auto captain, right, for most game weeks. And I don't mind captaining Saka or Rashford. They're good secondary captaincy options. So if you bring captaincy in and you're talking about where do I find points, if I've got Salah, he'll score lots of points, I imagine, fantastic. But if he's not my captain, if Haaland's my captain and I need to sacrifice individual players, not captaincy players, but that's why I've got the money. If I wanted to get to Salah, it would take a little bit of surgery. I think a 4-4-2 for Salah, in my opinion, would work well because I'd just be playing 2 4.5 million defenders like Botman. If you play Botman every week, Newcastle could be top 4. it's not the worst. So going Gabriel Jesus, and no other Arsenal attacker I can see in your draft.
Honestly, I picked Jesus simply because he was the cheapest Arsenal attacker, at least compared to Saka and Martinelli. So really, I just needed some Arsenal coverage, and Jesus was the most obvious one. But I do need to comment a little bit on what your point was earlier, because that is exactly what the veteran manager would say before a ball is kicked. The moment game week 1 deadline passes, if you don't own Haaland and or Salah, you would need massive balls to just hold on to your conviction in your own players that they would outscore Haaland and Salah. Because regardless of the captain debate, regardless of whether you own them for captaincy or not, whether you are so-called maximizing their potential, if Haaland scores 10 points, Salah scores 10 points, whoever you captain, you'll be sitting on 30 points regardless. The question is whether your mid-price players can match or better Haaland and Salah's combined score. Because the trick here is that as experienced FPL managers, we have a knack for identifying cheap midfielders that tend to do well in the opening stages of the season. I'm not saying that everyone should jump on Pedro Neto like we did last season, but we eventually will
I
find
was
someone like
against that.
us. Yeah, but we will find our fair share of Pascal Grosses or Matt Jensen's and so on, because they are still everywhere. Brentford, Brighton, Palace all still have a lot of underpriced players. Even Aston Villa, arguably, with Buendia and Jacob Ramsey, all have severely European pedigree type players that can easily smash teams so long as they are fit at the start of the season. So that's why I feel that the big small combination will still trump the dual 8.5 midfield choices at the start of the season,
Well,
at least.
it's
Then
more though, because I have Haaland like you do, so it's basically your Salah plus Mbeumo, Grealish, and Mateus against my Rashford, Bruno, Saka, and Erdegaard. It's not taking Haaland out of the equation. It comes down to Salah and your little midfielders against my consistent. And again, I could put that 3 million into Matoma and turn that up to a Son or a Kevin De Bruyne, right? So we'll move on to your defense and goalkeepers.
well, Rob, honestly, I like keeping things simple at the back, because whenever I make a transfer, I would almost certainly be invested in using it on a midfield or a forward player. So my back five, I honestly pick it for the first three players rather than the back five. So TAA, Estupinian are definitely the first two names on the team sheet, and they stay there. I have this personal strategy that I like to use where I have my game week 1 squad set up for 2 weeks specifically, and then I use 2 free transfers with a -4 to make big moves. And this is why I like having that backline set. As long as it's 8.0, 5.5, 5.0, I just leave it there. And I leave all the transfers for my front eight. And that being said, I do go against your philosophy of buying clean sheets at the start of the season as well. So all my players here are fullbacks. I pick my defenders based on attacking output purely first, and then I think of clean sheets later as the bonus points. I think the only thing I've not mentioned is that, while I have the same structure in terms of goalkeepers as you, I pick my 4.0 based on ability. And I do feel that Foster's time to outshine Lloris has definitely come this season. It's been long overdue. Lloris, just like De Gea, has made way too many mistakes and has been surviving on prestige alone. And it will be very, very soon that Foster will out Lloris. And unless Spurs buy a new goalkeeper, I see this happening very, very soon.
Yeah, I
So
do
that's it, really.
believe. I want to say Lloris has left Spurs. Or he confirmed at least that he wants to leave this summer. So I think you're right. I'd be mega surprised if they don't replace Lloris and they just Foster. But start of the season, might be too soon for them to do that. And you've gone for Taylor and Hoover. So Taylor's just a
Placeholder.
throwaway, yeah. You're just waiting
Yeah.
for preseason, and you've gone for Cash because he's the fullback. I can only imagine that Shaw as captain is just because it's an accident, right? You've just not updated because. Unless, are we going for a big move in the first week and we're going Shaw as captain against Wolves?
I think we should just talk about captaincy right before the season starts, right?
Oh yeah. I just, when you
we-
sent me the screenshot, I just thought, Shaw captain. I think he's just not. He's just not updated that.
Surely not.
No,
Yeah.
hopefully. I hope you do. I think it's a bold move that can help me get a leg up at the start of the season over you, which would be great.
Not as bold as the bench boost game week 1.
No, all right, but that did help me out actually. It did all right. It just I didn't know how many double game weeks there would end up being, so that was my bad. We're gonna end with 2 players not in our squads that we think could end up in it or come in for at least a draft at some point who we think are great value, and one that we think isn't necessarily good value. So just 3 quick ones. So I'll start. The first one I'll talk about, you already said it, he's in your squad. I was loving it when it came out, when we talked about it in the spaces. It is Mbuemo. Tony's out for months. He was playing up front a lot with Tony anyway. So I think Wissa will be his partner, who's, I believe, a 6 million forward, but 6.5 million midfielder, basically as the main striker in a 3-5-2. So you've got an out-of-position player, and they face Fulham, Palace, Bournemouth, Everton, Forest in the first 8. And the other more difficult games are Spurs, Newcastle, and Man United, and we know that they can concede goals. The other one, again, another player that I already mentioned was Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He's 6 million, and if he's fit, Everton are third on the fixture ticker. In the first 8, they've only got Arsenal as a top 6 side, and the other difficult game in that is Aston Villa. So we know he's got quality. So in those first 8 games, he's got Arsenal and Villa, but the other 6 are nice fixtures. If he's fit, he needs a good pre-season, and he could be in. And as for just a small one, Foden, just because Kevin De Bruyne is out, and I think his minutes will be higher because there's no Gundogan, there's no Kevin De Bruyne. But the one who I think is overvalued, even though I've got Botman at 4.5, it's Tripper at 6.5. The back end of last season, they were conceding a lot of goals, but everyone still had him, and we got scared to get rid of him because his ownership was so high. But I told you earlier, when I look at the start of the season, I look at these fixtures, and I personally like to look at clean sheets first for my defenders. I know Trippier can get returns, but he's got Villa, City, Liverpool, Brighton in the first 4. And I just feel like every single game they could concede in those matches. And he might get 1 or 2 assists, but I think that his clean sheet potentially so low in the first 4 games for 6.5 million, when you can have 5 million Arsenal defenders, 5.5 million City defenders, 5 million United defenders. I just feel as though 6.5 for Trippier, the same price as Robertson, is too much for me. How about your 3?
My 3. I have an alternate draft. I think everyone will look at my screenshot and immediately go, aha, Matheus Nunes, spot the Wolves fan. So I do have an alternate structure, and that is because I had a massive 50-50 call to make picking my Arsenal asset. So I went with Jesus here simply because of the dearth of strikers up front. And honestly, as you mentioned, a lot of people will definitely have their second forward as a 6 million striker potentially. You have picked Evan Ferguson. My man that I feel is the one that that got away would be Wissa partnering Mbuemo up front. So honestly, this basically brings forth my second argument where instead of owning Grealish, Matheus, and Jesus, the Arsenal player instead of Jesus would be Martinelli. So that would be my second player instead of Jesus. And then it would be Wissa instead of someone like Grealish. Like the screenshot I sent you was purely because I wanted as many Man City players as possible for that opening game week against Burnley. But otherwise, my alternative to that squad would be Martinelli, Wissa, and a 6.5 million midfielder.
And there's plenty to choose from, I think. I think we could agree there's a lot of good players for 6 to 9 million this year, I think, in FPL.
So those are my first 2. The third pick that I suspect will be overvalued, or at least I feel will be a trap, will emerge when we start to analyze a lot of teams' preseasons, because there is a defender in the game that is currently out of position. That guy is Vitinho from Burnley. If we start to look at Burnley's lineups, people will immediately notice that Nathan Tella, the top scorer, has returned to Southampton. Ian Madsen, their first choice left back, who is very responsible for doing John Stones-like movements from left back, has gone back to Chelsea. In a lot of these transitions, Vitinho was basically playing either left wing or right wing. If not, he would be playing in the half spaces, exactly similar to Gundogan for City. Because Company's Burnley side had so much resemblance to Man City in the Championship. So a lot of people will most certainly highlight Vitinho. And the unfortunate thing is that he just does not have the ability to cope as an attacking midfielder. So I suspect first choice, at least when season starts, will be Benson, Goodmanson, and Zaruri as their first three. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see everyone highlight Vitinho as the next John Lundstrom of some sort. But yeah, that will almost certainly be a trap from my end.
Interesting. I didn't even when I was doing the predicted lineups, I wouldn't have gone for that. He is the joint lowest selected Burnley defender right now. So that's our first drafts. We will be compiling our predicted lineups and looking into how teams play and assets for every single team in the Premier League. So we're aiming to do every single Premier League team. There'll be the next videos on the channel. So thank you very much. Maybe leave a like and subscribe. If you are new here, we'll be back with weekly streams. It's two of us today and probably two of us for most of this preseason. But once the season starts, hopefully doing weekly streams, looking at a different outlook to FPL, which we talked about before. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for joining me today, Lucian. And I'll see you soon and see all the viewers soon when we release those videos, giving a team guide for every single team and all the players on them. So thanks very much, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.
See you next time, guys.